Hello, everyone, and welcome to Office Hours. It must be Tuesday because we're here to answer all your questions about Alexa development, ambient computing, you name it. And normally, or at least recently, we've been hosting a lot of these episodes with guests. We bring people in from our product teams or from the community. We've had some Alexa champions and some skill developers on here. But today we're going back to our roots. Today is just Q&A. And so if you have any questions for us, we would be happy to answer them. We might even have some time to dive into things like, let's take that apart, or let's try a sample or whatever. So if you have any thoughts or ideas or questions for us today, please drop them in the chat, and we'll do our very best to get to all of them. With that, Amanda, thank you for being here with me, as always.
Hi.
Always good to have you here.
Morning, everybody, or afternoon, or whatever the time and case may be. How are you doing today, Jeff?
I'm good. I actually tried to do a little live streaming this morning.
I know.
And completely forgot that I had a conference call scheduled 20 minutes after I started my stream.
Oh,
and so
gosh.
5 minutes into my stream, I saw it pop up on my phone, and I was like, oh. So I had to cancel that and scrap it. But I'll be back on tomorrow.
That's a shame. Well, that's great. You've been streaming a lot.
I have. I spend a decent amount of time. Usually it's about 5 or 6 hours a week. Usually like hour and a half chunks. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, but sometimes some Fridays. We'll see. But yeah, it's been kind of fun to work on code every single day. It's refreshing.
Gets you a nice routine, especially since you're getting up in the morning. Gets your day started off right, huh?
Yes. Yeah.
And you also
it's a great way to start my day.
Some great videos this last week, the Getting Started series.
If
you guys haven't checked that out on YouTube, be sure you do. It's a really good beginner crash course as well as a refresher for all the seasoned developers. I was watching episode 3 right before this call because I was trying to see how you put together your skills so to help me, because I'm also working on some of my first skills. I published small stuff, but I'm trying to get better and learn all the best practices for skill development. So even though it's not my first skill, it's really nice to have those videos. I think they just posted the URL in the chat and down below. So let us know what you think if you have watched those. We'd love to hear from you, and just give them a try because they're really good video series.
Yeah, I always appreciate the feedback, even if it's negative. If you're like, I hate this or whatever, that kind of stuff really goes a long way in helping us decide what to do next. So really do appreciate that. Speaking of next, if you guys recall, every week we've been doing a tip from the Skill Quality Coach. Take a quick step back there. If you guys aren't familiar with the Skill Quality Coach, you can find that in the Analytics tab of the Developer Console for your skills. And you can go in there and the coach will give you tips on things that you can do to improve the quality of your skill and improve your skill quality score. And so this week's tip is around fresh content. This is something that is incredibly important to me and something that I spend a lot of time thinking about. And there's really 2 ways that I think about fresh content in my skills. The first one is to just create a greater variety of content within your skill. And so we'll see this a little later. I'll probably demonstrate some of the skill that I've been building. But everything that I build, I take all speech, all kinds of spoken content out of my code, and I put it in a database. And then I have content types, and I say, hey, I need a welcome message, or I need a goodbye, or I need a whatever. And I have 10 or 15 of those in my database. And so it just goes and grabs one randomly for me, presents that to the user. And as a result, it feels like it's new and fresh and interesting. As Alan's saying in the chat, CMS, right? Content management is key to all of this. But in addition to that, and one of the other things that my skill does is the idea of continuing to provide really, truly fresh content. Here's new information you've never heard before. And that could be in the form of a news feed or all sorts of other things. But that's something else that I've spent a lot of time thinking about. How do I present new news to a user? And I actually found that I have different kinds of news. I have things you might want to know about, and then I have things I want you to know about. And those qualify as slightly different kinds of news in the way they're presented and the way that they're managed inside the database. So we can dig into all of that later. But the key here, if we think about this week's tip for the Skill Quality Coach, it's about fresh content.
Awesome. Oh, and before we get started with this week's show and all your comments, I want to say that next week's show, we're going to have our colleagues from the certification team here. This is always a hot topic. We get a lot of questions about certification. So be sure to tune in whenever we talk to this team. It's going to be really beneficial and insightful for you. If you have certification questions, bring them next week. That's a better week than asking this week. Next week, we're going to have the certification team.
Right. I will be very empathetic and understand your certification plight. But getting them here on the show and putting them on the hot seat to answer your hotly debated questions is always a better way to handle a lot of this, because it goes directly back to them to understand the kinds of pain that some of us are feeling as developers, or maybe some of the successes you're having too. Okay, let's welcome some folks in here. So Prisoner 4044 is here, Habuma, Jawwork, A Witters, Brian Tarbox, everybody's welcome. Bass Wolf from London. I've never seen your name before. It's possible I've just missed it, but welcome. Gavin Watson is here. Trade Last is in the Bay Area. Startup Sanatana's here. Gavin Watson, man, we got a whole crew of people. Alan's first question is, what is the latest on widgets? I don't know that I have anything that is the latest on widgets.
You don't have anything the latest yet, but eventually we will.
Yeah, Amanda had a good word in her sentence, which was yet. I think that there are a bunch of things that are going to be announced and released, including things like, when is Alexa live? All of those questions will come to be in the relatively near future. So while I don't have any questions or answers for you today about widgets, I promise there are answers coming, and that's I think that's some of the good news. Let's see. Eduardo says, good morning. I'm from House Easy, a Brazilian home automation startup, and welcome. We should connect you with one of our colleagues. His name is Emerson Sklar. He was just at Mobile World Congress, so if he's not back in the United States, he's probably jet lagged in one place or the other. But he would be a great person for you to know. All right, Brian Tarbox comes in with a question, which is, how are top Alexa skills in the store determined? 3 of the current top 7 have really low review scores. Brian, while I can assure you that no one is publishing that algorithm publicly, and I suspect it's probably not entirely an algorithm at all, or at least entirely, there are a number of factors that go into determining what they consider a top skill to be. Right? I mean, ratings and reviews certainly are a good consideration, but I don't think they're the only consideration. You could have one of the challenges with a 5-star rating system is that a skill that has 10 users and gives them all a 5-star looks really, really awesome. But a skill with 2 million users that is a 3.5 star looks really not so good. Or even I would hope that it wouldn't dip down into the ones, but I've even seen skills that get bombarded with a bunch of 2-star reviews, and so they're in the 2s someplace, but it's actually a really good skill. It's just it's not meeting specific needs, or people are not getting what they expect from it.
Yeah.
So it can't just be skill rating. It can't just be the number of users, because you could have a ton of users and still be a terrible experience, or maybe a very niche experience. It could also be maybe the kinds of experiences you offer, or the revenue you generate, or whatever. There's lots and lots of ways to slice this cake. But I don't think that there is a specific one. I would bet that the team that builds the top Alexa skills in the store, which is our consumer marketing team, my suspicion is that they have a number of filters and levers that they use to determine who's going to be the top Alexa skill.
What's next in those questions? Are there any updates around skill marketing?
Phelps Inc., I feel like I want a little more meat on that question. My instinct reading your question is around promoted skills, something that we talked about last year. I don't have any new updates on that, and we're kind of in that window now where, as you guys want to know things and like, hey, what's the update or what's the status on this? We're starting to creep into the window of like, hey, you're just, like, clearly it's going to happen at Alexa Live, right? We're there are a number of announcements and things that happen there, releases, all sorts of things kind of get tied together. And while we haven't announced the date for Alexa Live yet, we're in that window of like, even if something is ready soon, while they may announce it, like a lot of the news and noteworthy announcements will happen at Alexa Live. Okay. I don't have a great answer for you on that one, unfortunately. This is one of those things where I've been pushing our product team, and behind the scenes, we should take a note on this. One of the things that I really wanted to see is a full list of all updates for Alexa developers. Now, this isn't just like, hey, here's the status of widgets or here's the state it's currently in, although that is incredibly beneficial. But it also comes down to like what tools are being added or changed or modified or deprecated, and how do I know that? Because it's, I don't think it's ideal to come into like our developer console and find out that a tool's been removed.
It's a bit of a bad experience, isn't it?
Right. And like you get deprecation messages, but once it's been deprecated, I don't think that they put a message up that says, by the way, this is now missing. It's just now missing. So I think that we need a page that really provides a lot of the insight and understanding for developers about what's going on and where things have happened. So I'll take that as another note that we need to be better about that. I think that the real trick is finding an owner, because all of these features, all of these products are owned by dozens and dozens of people. Amanda can attest to that. And because of
you got to find the right person all the time to reach out to you about whatever this or that thing. So
it is really tricky. And one of the things that we do after each office hours is try to dig it up and figure out who this person is and how can we get them the feedback that we just heard on this show. So yeah, there's quite a bit of that for sure.
We have our developer advocacy group listening in as well. So we take a lot of your questions. If we don't have the answer, we take it to them and say, hey, we will try to get that answer for you. So
yep,
they're usually in the background listening in on what's going on in this conversation. Next question. I think this is more of a community chat question, although I'd be interested to hear your answer, Jeff. What libraries and tools do folks use to pull and manage content and tying it to intents and outtense? Is outtense a word?
I don't think outtense is a word, but I like what he's getting at there.
I get it.
Yeah. For me, I tend not to lean on many libraries. I would imagine this is this takes us down a whole potential rat hole about large learning models and stuff like that too, large language models, sorry. As we continue down this path, because as I described earlier, I have a database that I have hand curated that contains all sorts of content that are welcome messages, goodbye messages, lots and lots of different classifications of the kinds of speech that my skill has. And I wrote all of that. But it seems to me in the very, very near future that it's silly for me to write that stuff, because I could probably rely on artificial intelligence to generate that stuff for me on the fly.
Yeah, now, it depends though. I love to do the specifically curated. It kind of lets me like be a writer in a way.
Yeah, I think there's a toss up there, right? One is I have the opportunity to handcraft and curate and create exactly the experience that I want. And for people that are a control freak about their software, like I am, makes a lot of sense. For people that are less invested in that or less interested and just want their thing to work and don't want, like it's a comparison when you think about a developer that builds for the web. There are some developers that are very invested in exactly the pixel perfect CSS that gets them exactly the view and the colors and the layout that they want. And then you've met many developers that are just like, yeah, there's a button and a form on a page. It's great. And that's perfectly sufficient to them. And so I think depending on who you are, I think that bringing AI into the story, bringing engines that can generate your content for you can go a really long way for those people that are not as invested in fully controlling the experience. And I'll admit, like even for a lot of the content that I have generated, I've used some of these tools to generate different versions of that content. So I wrote 2 and I said, give me more sentences that look like this one. And it gave me 10 more. And it was like, that's actually pretty awesome, because now they're variations on the same theme, but it sounds different to the user every time they use it. Yeah, it's an interesting future we're heading into, that's for sure. All right. Habuma says, speaking of certification, I submitted the latest changes for my mouse guest skill last night around 9:30 p.m. Mountain Time and was pleasantly surprised to get an email at 5:30 this morning telling me that it was live. That's amazing.
Great.
Thank you.
Always like to hear a happy story about the certification process.
Positive feedback is always good.
Always.
So a little side story. Craig and I, Habuma, have had an opportunity to meet in person before, and I've talked to him about his mouse guest skill. If you guys don't know, mouse guest is meant to be used inside a Disney park. And what's really interesting to me about this is he made this point, and I guess I hadn't really thought it through. He goes, obviously, I can't go test all of my stuff by going to Disney every time I want to try something.
Right.
And I was like, yeah, it's kind of a good point. And so what he had to do was start building a virtual mapping service for himself that says, like, this is where this thing is, and if you're in this box, you're here. And it was really interesting to think about some of the challenges that he has building a location-aware skill when he can't be in the location all the time to like test and run it. I haven't built a lot of location-aware stuff other than like samples and things like that. So it was very eye-opening to me to think about the challenges that he has to go through to even simulate and replicate his location and test his skill. But great feedback.
Super interesting. We have some questions from Eduardo asking, can I have some direct help? And I believe our DAG team is reaching out to you now to help out with that direct help. You're working on some answers for support.
Awesome. That's why we do this. And most people may not realize that, but we have someone from our developer advocacy team here every week behind the scenes. And for questions like this, where you need direct help, they are connecting and reaching out. Sometimes it's via Slack or via email, depending on what your preference is. But yeah, we're here to support you. And while we can't necessarily unpack your whole skill here on the air, always feel free to ask your questions, and we can do our very best to point you in the right direction.
Next question. A couple of weeks ago, you mentioned and showed briefly how to set up a repeat intent. Can you go over that again? Hey, that's a great question. Do you happen to still have that code?
I do. It's part of that skill that we've been talking about. So what I'm going to do is share my screen. Hopefully the microphone doesn't get too crackly. We're going to do an entire screen and say that and then this. Can you see my Visual Studio Code?
I can.
Great. So I can actually show you that. So there's a couple of pieces that go into doing repeat intent. This is something that every skill should do. I might make the argument that the skill should do it automatically, but that's another thing, because there certainly could be times where you don't want that to happen. But what I do is I have in my index file. So this is the raw like starter file, right? This is the index that my skill launches with. And I have all of these handlers. All of these handlers point to some intent, like the buy product intent or the cancel intent or whatever. And then I have some code in another file that runs to execute whatever I should do in those situations. But if we come all the way down here to the bottom, like bottom, you'll notice that we have the ability to add what we call request interceptors and response interceptors. So a request interceptor is a function that runs before anything happens with your code. So before we start digging through any of your request handlers, before we decide what handler to jump into, any of that stuff, you can have a function called, well, I call it request log, but you can call it whatever you'd like. This was originally, before our local debugging got so good, this was just the naming convention that I used for logging my requests, so that as I was looking through my CloudWatch logs, I could see the request, I could see the error, and then I could know, like, oh, this request caused this error, and it gave me the context to understand what was going on. It's expanded beyond that sense. So I have request interceptors. Response interceptors are a function that fires after everything else has happened inside your code. So you've generated a speech, you've said, hey, send this back to Alexa, and right before that, like right before it actually goes back to the Alexa cloud and responds to your user, you have this one last chance to manipulate and edit and change what's happening there. So my functions look like this. My request log, I come in and I grab your session attributes, which is a package of data that I've held onto in each session. And then I call into my database and I say, hey, who is this user? I want to make sure that I have the most recent up-to-date information on my user. And so I grab that and then I just slam it into my session attributes and say, hey, here's all my user's data. I do this every single time so that I'm not out of sync and I'm not losing track of where things go. But that's not what you asked. You asked about repeating. And so that happens in my response log. The first thing that I need to know is, what did I just say to the user? And so the only way to know that is on the way out, right before we pass it back to Alexa, we want to be able to capture what the user said. And so I have a little function that I've built for myself called put repeat data, and I'll show you what that looks like. It's down here somewhere. Yeah, this function right here. And it looks a little complicated. I promise it's not. But this put repeat data, all I'm doing is passing in that big handler input object that we use all over our skill. And the first thing that I do is I generate the response. So this is the thing that you do when you want to generate all the speech and everything and send off the response. And normally we return that. Well, here I don't do that. Instead, I actually just capture it. So I say handler input dot response builder to get response, and I capture that as response. This is now the JSON that I was planning on sending to Alexa, except that I have it and I can manipulate it and change it. And so here what I do is I say, okay, well, inside response, there's a value called output speech. This might actually be a good thing to show here. If I come into the developer console, let's go to the test tab really quick. And I'll just show you what an example of this looks like. So if I say open voice developer, I apologize, she's going to speak over the microphone, so you'll hear that too.
Oh, I didn't hear it, so it's fine. Oh no, now I can hear it.
Yeah, there's definitely a little clickiness, right?
It kind of sounds like it's underwater.
Yeah. Okay, so you can see here that this is the kind of JSON that I am capturing by asking for that. And in here, I have response.output speech. And so if we look at what we're doing here, I'm saying response.output speech and response.output speech.ssml. And we'll take a look at that too. You can see that SSML is actually the thing that I care about. This is the response that I just sent. Hello and welcome to Voice Developer. You can see that that's the speech that's rendered right here. Mm-hmm. So I'm capturing the actual output speech that we're sending. And then you can also see, if I scroll down here a little bit further, that I have reprompt.output speech.ssml. And so between those two, I have output speech, and then down here I have reprompt.output speech. I'm checking to make sure they exist because they don't have to exist. And if they exist, the one last thing that I have to do is I replace the opening and closing speak tags. So you'll see that they always append a speak and a close speak. It's at the very end. This is appended automatically by the SDK so that you don't have to worry about it. But I don't want those in there. I need to remove those to be able to capture what I actually want to say, which is what was the thing that I said to the skill last time. And so I'm removing the opening and closing speak tags, and that's pretty much it. All I'm doing then is assigning them to my session variables. So I have session attributes.previous speak and previous reprompt. And that means that when I come back the next time, I say something to the user and the user responds, this is a nice loop that just continues to happen. Every time I'm putting what I just said in these session variables. And then when someone says, hey, can you repeat that? Well, now we hit my repeat intent. And in my repeat intent, all I do is grab those session variables, previous speak, previous reprompt, and I send those back to the user. And I say the exact same thing that I said a moment before. I don't have to look it up in a database again. I don't have to regenerate it. I don't have to jump through hoops to get back to what intent was I running and how do I, none of that. I'm saying exactly what I said to them previously without having to do any extra work. So
Jeff, have you posted this code up anywhere?
Sorry.
Have you posted this code up anywhere that we can find it, or should we just review the video to?
No, we're going to do that. So let me get back to my browser, and the place that I can send you for now. This is going to change, but it's there for now. All of the code that I just showed you is in a personal GitHub repository of mine called Voice Developer. I'm posting that to the chat right now. But if you go to my GitHub, github.com/Jeff Blankenberg, it is one of the pinned repositories that's there. And I think that'll go a long way in making it easy for you to follow along. You won't be able to just copy that skill and run it. There are a couple of missing files that are like database keys and API keys, but you can use that as a reference and pull any of the files out that you'd like or whatever.
That still has a lot of stuff going on it.
It does, and it's only going to continue to grow. But so Yekrats 1, hopefully that answered your question.
Thank you for going over that again. It's really useful. let's take a look at the rest of the chat. Oh my gosh, there's so many questions today. Which, by the way, thank you all for coming in and giving your questions. It's really good. At the beginning of the year, there was talk of being able to advertise on Echo Show screens. I don't know where we are with that.
Yeah, there have been a couple of conversations about the idea of ad placement. One of them is widgets. I think that's one of the reasons that people are so interested in widgets, is that you have screen real estate outside of your skill. So while it's not necessarily an ad, it is a beneficial placement and a way to remind people to use your skill. Very, very valuable, not only for discovery, but for recall. But we have had conversations about being able to place, if you look on here, there's always like popular questions and recommendations. And if I scroll through this, this is something about Paris, or maybe a picture I took. Here's a popular recipe. Like this thing is scrolling through. And sometimes you'll see a skill like that one for Roblox. So the question really comes to, how do I put my skill there? And while there isn't a solid answer today, this falls into the promoted skills discussion that we had slightly earlier. And promoted skills are going to be a thing. I don't have any new information to share today, but I can assure you, no later than Alexa Live, a date I haven't announced, we will have much, much more to share about promoted skills for you.
Yeah, that kind of leads into the next question, which are there any new products or services that I should consume? Like the way you phrased that. Alexa Live is where we make our big announcements. So the pre-announcement that we're going to announce the day for Alexa Live, and then at Alexa Live, we'll announce a lot of things.
Yeah, for sure. Eduardo, who was the one looking for support earlier, said their Lambda function is working fine. Their OAuth is working fine. It only doesn't work on the Alexa console. And that sometimes it feels like Alexa is a black magic box. I send stuff in and hope that the results I get, because I don't know what Alexa is trying to do and getting as a response. And so it looks like you're working with our folks here on the DAG team. So I'll let that continue. But I agree with you. Sometimes it is difficult to understand exactly what's happening inside the box. But for me, anyway, if you think about the testing tools that we have available, it should make it easier for you to get some insight about what's happening and why it's happening. There's a tool inside the developer console called the natural language actually, that's not entirely the name. It is called the NLU Evaluator. I think that's what it's called. You can find it when you're looking at your interaction model. There's a button that says Evaluate Model, and we have an utterance profiler and what we call NLU evaluation. Utterance profiler just gives you a very simple, like, one shot into your interaction model, right? The machine learning engine that you've built to decide how and when people speak, where it should go. And the NLU evaluation tool is basically just a collection of those. You can build a set and say, hey, when someone says something like this, it should trigger this intent with this slot value. And you can run it like unit tests in your code. And then you can say, oh, like, I just broke something. I should go see why that test is failing now. So if you're not using the NLU evaluator, I can't recommend it enough. But yeah, it is tricky. I think you can get more refined at it as you go, but it'll never stop being a black box, right? There's magic in the idea of natural language understanding, and even in speech to text. Being able to masterfully decide exactly what's going to be said and how it was interpreted takes a little finesse and testing. This is especially true as you start building skills that use like medical terms or deep legal terms, where there's this huge library of words that are not used in common language. That becomes a trick as well. Actually, Amanda, I'm talking about this, but you have a far deeper background in that specific area than I do.
Oh, like in terms of vocabulary selection and stuff like that? Yeah. Actually, it's very funny. I'm working right now on a skill that uses the names of Final Fantasy cities. So I have to like make it understand the difference between, the East Shard versus the West and all that stuff like that. Shroud versus the West Shroud and all that weird stuff. So those are very uncommon words for sure. Yeah. I like to use words from like anime and stuff when I'm writing my skills. So they're a little bit more difficult finding the right thing. I was actually really surprised. I was trying to code my own skill on stream, just get the practice of live coding on my stream, and I saw that it was hitting the slot and it was returning the name, but I hadn't hooked up the slot exactly correctly. So, but it was really easy to like scroll down into the evaluator and see like what it was hearing because I was getting the intent right. It was just a matter of like disambiguating between the different weird cities that I've put into this skill. So
yeah, especially with weird words like that, or they're not made up, obviously, but they're kind of made up by
they're
someone.
kind of made up.
Those get really tricky because it's not a pronunciation model that it understands necessarily.
Yeah, you have to, hopefully it understands what you're saying. So there's some cities that are easier, things like the Wolf Den, where it's pretty easy to get it to understand those words because those are common words. So I'm testing with the easy ones first
Cool.
so that it understands what I'm saying. And then when I get a little bit deeper into it, I'll have to test with the trickier words.
Awesome. All right. Alan, coming back to my conversation about managing content, CRM, he wasn't even thinking about the LLM conversation. He was just interested in where people, he was getting to the point of like, you have these responses in tables, some have it in spreadsheets. How do you manage those? What's the code that you use to get that out? And what do you use? And he said he's biased. He wrote the multivocal library around that concept. So he doesn't have to rewrite that code every single time. Yeah, I don't use any libraries except for really what I've written for myself, right? The way that I am structured, I'm using Airtable as my backend for all of my content. And in that content, Airtable has a pretty robust API. And so it makes it pretty easy for me to just build out functions that call and get a specific type of content. And then again, I've built a bunch of helper functions to sort and randomize and pull any records out that I need so that, like you said, I don't have to rewrite it from scratch every single time. It's really tweaking an API call and making a function call. That's like I've tried to make it as simple as I can for myself. But yeah, I would be curious from others that are on the stream right now. Where do you store your content? Do you store it in your skill? Do you store it in a text file? Do you store it on S3? Do you just keep it in line in your code, which is a perfectly acceptable answer as well? I'd be very curious to know what other people are doing. So drop it in the chat.
Habuma says, working toward a hybrid model, maybe I ask AI to generate content and then make it in a CMS or table after reviewed for accuracy. That makes sense.
Yep, that's exactly.
Yeah, some of the problem with it, as you mentioned, the AI generated content is that it is a higher latency. It's a slower process.
It is.
Yeah, for sure.
Very much. And he says he's going to be testing his skill in Disneyland next week.
Have fun in
Very
Disneyland.
cool. And as a friend who's testing it in Disney World. Awesome. It's always
fun.
good to do real world tests. And I feel pain for you that you have to make that trip and like really go through the paces. But
it's a rough one.
I'm sure you'll make the best of it with some Dole Whip or something.
I bought, there's this website, I'm going to sort of set up my plug. They do the scents of Disney, like the smells. And I had this Dole Whip bath bomb that I used just last night to make your whole bathroom smell like pineapple. Really can't recommend that experience enough. Wow. It's really nice.
You're saying it was good or not good?
Yeah, very good. Absolutely. Great. I mean, it's like a nice little tropical, it's the middle of, it's still winter here. March is like the dreary dregs of winter. I need that tropical infusion in my life.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you.
Oh, what's next in chat? A couple hellos. Hello, Joe. How you doing?
Yeah, it's always good to see Joe. Joe, I feel like I haven't seen you in person in like since COVID. It feels like it's been more recent than that, but it's been too long.
We're just talking a little bit about the LMM and fallbacks. Just some thoughts, I think. Question from Brian Tarbucks. Does the response interceptor handle APL touches and what is said in response to them? I think that's from your response code earlier.
The response interceptor. So we have a request interceptor, response interceptor. Response interceptor is on the way out. I believe it handles everything because it doesn't matter what you're doing with your skill. You're always passing a response back. So whether that is a touch event or whether that is a in-skill purchase request or some kind of dialogue or directive, all of those things do get passed out to Alexa. Now, let's use the example of in-skill purchasing, right? We're in my skill. I say, hey, dude, do you want to buy this axe? And the person's like, yeah. Well, even then, I'm sending a directive to Alexa to say, hey, they want to buy the axe. Can you sell them the axe, please? And that directive gets passed to Alexa. Now, Alexa takes over from there and handles the rest of the purchase process and then hands it back to me whether they buy or whether they don't buy, and lets me know what happened. But every time that I talk to, every time the user uses my skill, regardless of what I'm doing, whether those are APL commands or anything else, I can demonstrate that as well. I have some APL in my skill. In fact, let's just do that. I don't think it ever hurts us to do more screen sharing. I think that's always.
Yeah, I love the demos. I think they're really nice to see.
Okay, so there's my screen, and we'll come into testing. And I got to open my skill again, but I'll skip past the. Okay, so I have an office hours intent, and the purpose of the office hours intent is not to show you any language stuff. It's to show you this screen. And this screen has thumbnails of each of the individual episodes. It has information about who the guests were, so you can see their names on the screen. And even that request right there sent APL to the device. So if we look at, I guess I got to turn this back on. But if I scroll back up here, you can see that all of the APL directives, all of that stuff is still captured in my JSON. And so all of the things are in here. And I think even if we dig deeper and look at the individual items, these are touch wrappers. So these touch wrappers have a touch event on them. And so if you tap on one of those, then I get data passed back to my skill, which again, we're talking about the response. So this is the on the way out, but all of that APL is captured right here. You can see every bit of it, all of the individual items. And then I have my data source, which has the individual office hours items. All of those pieces are here so that we can render this on the screen. But in addition to that, if I click on one of these, it's going to start playing it, I think. So I guess I could have done this another way with logging, but that event should still have fired through my response interceptor because that touch event still goes back to the skill. I think. And now, Brian, that being said, now I'm questioning it because I didn't see it here. I was thinking I was going to see it here. But I would think that user touch event data should still be going out through your skill. Gosh, did I just talk myself out of it? Maybe I did.
There's some conversation in the chat too. Looks like Kabuma recorded a video last week showing how to handle the repeat intent. So maybe that'll go up. We always appreciate community content reinforcing some of our technical stuff. So
oh yeah, for sure,
absolutely. If you're not in the Slack, great time to join. Most of you probably are, but if you aren't, we often post things there, respond to community. So please join us on the Slack if you want to see the videos other people post and just share content with each other and share your technical questions and concerns outside of office hours. Obviously, you only get us for 1 hour a week, but we're actually there a lot more than we are here. We're always there. So,
and I'm sure many of the people that are in the audience know that, but like, especially if you tag one of us, I'm going to at least see it. I may not be able to reply right away, or I might be in a meeting or whatever, but I am acutely aware of everything that happens on Slack. And so if you're having a conversation, I read all the threads. I try to at least leave a reaction, if not a response to folks. And again, we have our developer advocacy group behind the scenes. We have Amanda and we have a bunch of folks from our product team that are there as well. So I can't emphasize this enough. If you have a question, or if you're not sure how to do something, or you're just frustrated with how something's working, post it in Slack. You're going to get the kinds of reactions that you want. Even if something gets no replies, many people read it. And that goes a long way in helping to improve all of the product stuff that's going on and all the software behind the scenes. Okay.
Where are we caught up? Okay, it looks like, Eduardo, it looks like your comments are being handled by our team. So thank you for continuing to chat with us about that in the chat. Appreciate that. We'll try to get to the bottom of your issues. I know that you've got some specific stuff they're working on. Account linking, we had that team on recently.
We did.
About account linking. Basswolf asks, any chance can you help convert a certification issue with cancel flow? Received a comment from CERT about cancel refund. Well, we are having CERT team on next week. But that might be a week from today, so I don't know about that.
Right. I specifically wouldn't be able to confirm a certification issue.
Yeah.
We don't even have access to those systems, unfortunately. But Basswolf, I don't know how you want that pronounced. It could be bass, like you're a guitarist. I don't know the answer there, but our DAG team, hopefully behind the scenes, can chat with you about this. They have access to some of those systems. But what I'm reading from this is that certification said that a cancel or refund subscription test flow is failing on the Alexa side, and you're not really sure why. It sounds to me like maybe the response they gave you was a little too vague or non-specific. So hopefully we can get some clarification there. I want to scroll back up in the comments just a little bit. There was a comment from Habuma about how not only did he create a video that kind of shows the way that I do the repeat intent, but that he also captures the APL stuff that is passed through so that he can regenerate all of that as well. That's actually a really smart move and something that I hadn't done yet, only because I hadn't run into it, but that's actually a really great idea. I will have to modify my stuff to capture the repeat APL as well. Great idea. All right.
We're just looking at the comments now. I'm like scrolling down. What haven't we talked about yet? Dana Voice says I've done a few tests of mouse guests as well on site. I assume. Have you gone to Disneyland and given it a shot on site? I mean, lucky if so, right? So we're talking about testing, debugging. Habuma says, regarding where I keep my content, I looked at Airtable and like it, just haven't used it in a real skill yet. For mouse guests, some of the data is in JSON files and some is in JSON files in S3, so it's easy to update. That seems like a pretty decent workflow, right? The JSON files are always a good place to store your data. It can be a little bit tricky to update because you've got to be sure you type it in like the right formatting and everything.
Yep, I'm trying to figure out where you are in the flow. I feel like
Yeah, I'm like kind of scrolled down a little bit.
Okay.
Right under a couple longer comments.
Eduardo says he's using Postman for some of his testing. Postman is good. The problem that I have with Postman, and there's also the Alexa CLI, which can do some of this testing for you as well, is I just find it's easier to understand what's going on when I see it in the developer console than it is with just some test logs and stuff like that. But yeah, I think that Postman certainly works, and I've built no shortage of Postman tests for a lot of my skills in the past. All right. Phelps says he uses DynamoDB. They're using the AWS CLI in PowerShell. Great. Tapster says they use skill-only data in DynamoDB. So that would be like user data or profile data, stuff like that. And then everything else they have an API for.
I think you're caught up to where I am now,
Yeah,
reading down the other comments. Yep.
Brian Tarbach says, I have some autistic friends and I'm working on a skill to help neurotypicals and neurodivergents understand each other. Would this be considered medical advice in any way? I mean, my initial instinct on this is no, because you're not prompting them for treatment or diagnosis. I mean, if your skill is like, oh, you're autistic based on like that, probably would not be
right.
Okay. But I think if you're just focused on communication styles and help, like it's almost like a translator of sorts, that doesn't seem like it would be any issue at all.
And if your question is, would CERT be okay with this? We'll have CERT on. So maybe save that for next week. Ask them what they think about it. But it doesn't sound like it's medical. It sounds like it's less formal than that to me. When will we be able to have Alexa hosted smart home skills? Well, we can't speak to specific roadmap stuff. But
Yeah, roadmap is always hard to talk about. But when we talk about, I'm curious about that because that feels dangerous for you as the developer.
kind of.
Alexa hosted smart home skills, what you're basically asking for is just a free Lambda function. Because the model and everything is already built for you because of smart home. So you're talking about the backend service that that talks to your internal systems and turns some user's light on or off. I don't know that I would want that to be Alexa hosted. I'd be curious why you're requesting that. Maybe I'll learn something from this. But that feels to me like something you would want to own. So I'm just curious. Happy to have a conversation. I'm always proven wrong, or at least regularly proven wrong. Habuma says he's going to have a Dole Whip and some churros and that fine bromine smell of pirate water.
They have a bath bomb for that too.
The pirate water?
Mm-hmm.
Is it just a chlorine tablet? What is it?
No, it's like a salty sea kind of smell. It's actually quite pleasant. Yeah, I had to know.
Yeah, I mean that's one of those things like you don't know until you know.
Yeah, of course. It's so iconic. All those smells are iconic.
All right. Rockalock says hard codes a lot of the content. For others, it's a MySQL database. He has a skill for vignettes for African American contributors and saints. That's cool.
That's really interesting. Yeah, for saints and African American contributors. That sounds like a really useful, cool skill. Jeff, do you normally use VS Code for development? Can you show a little bit of the VS Code magic of why you use it?
Oh my goodness.
Yes, both of us use VS Code for development. That's what I use too.
Yeah. Here, I'll show you some magic just because it's awesome. So I gotta actually share my screen. Let me do that first. Share screen, entire screen. Okay, so I'm back in VS Code. The biggest thing for me was the ability to do local debugging. And if you guys haven't seen this before, there's a small file that you set up in VS Code called launch.json. You can find a copy of this, like it all exists in our tech docs, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it, but this is what mine looks like. And this allows me then in VS Code to say run locally. And what it's doing is it's actually spinning up my Node instance, because mine isn't written in Node, and running it here. It also, as part of local debugging, tells the developer console that my endpoint has been updated to point to my local machine. So what's super cool about this is if I come all the way back here and go into my developer console, and I say, let's not do that. I just added something new in here. Give me a SpeechCon. I didn't actually say it. Give me a SpeechCon. You'll see. Okay, so what you'll see here is that it actually sent that request into my skill. So I can look down here at the bottom of the request, which is this piece here, and I can see that they hit the, where is it? SpeechCon intent. And the name, I don't have a specific type of SpeechCon, so that affects how my skill responds. And then the response, you can see it's labeled skill request and skill response. I can see the responses that happened right in here. And so let's use that SpeechCon as an example. I'll come into my SpeechCon intent and we'll do something like, this is all the logic for that SpeechCon intent, but we'll just add a thing in here. It's a console log, Amanda Lang, just to have a comment in here. And then I'm just gonna refire that up, come back to my skill, say, give me a SpeechCon. And again, from this perspective, it looks all exactly the same. It's very interesting. He's whispering SpeechCons. That's for another time. It's because I'm wrapping it in a whisper mode. You can see that here. But Brian doesn't whisper. So it's weird that he's whispering the SpeechCons. That's something I'm going to have to play with. But anyway, you can see that I can continue to test, and it doesn't look like anything different to me here. But in VS Code, I get that request and response every time, and you can see.
Oh, that's my name. Yeah, it
You
worked.
can see my comment right here. So I'm able to do all of my debugging here locally on my machine without that huge wait to like push things out and wait for them to deploy out to a Lambda function somewhere. Then once I feel like it's working well, then I just jump into my terminal and I say something like ask deploy. I mean, I'll take that comment out so it's not in there. But I can say ask deploy, and then it's just going to push all of my code to not only my interaction model, but also to my my Lambda function. Now, while that's happening, one other thing that I would love to show you is that when you come into your skill, there are many times where you'll come into the build tab and you may want to change permissions or some of the other model related things for your skill. Like, oh, you know what? I want to ask for customer phone number now. Well, one of the things that's always been really tricky here is that this doesn't exist as a file. There isn't a file that shows me all of the permissions and everything that are available. And if I come back to custom, I also have these interfaces. Like I want APL to work, right? And so down here, I have APL, and I can decide what devices I'm going to support, and I have to turn that on. All of this kind of lives in the developer console, and it's kind of invisible for the most part. So one of the other things that I have is the Alexa Skills Toolkit for VS Code installed here locally. This gives me the ability to do a lot of the other things that we've done, including being able to test my skill. We have a simulator right here in VS Code. So I can do all of that stuff right here. I can replay sessions. I can change what size the viewport's going to be for device preview for APL. But that skill manifest is huge. And let me show you. In my code, I actually down here at the bottom have a file called skill.json. This is the file that has all of those APL profiles. It has the permissions that I want. So like first name is right here. But you'll see that that's the only thing I'm asking for is first name. But I just changed it in the developer console. And so if I say ask deploy, all of that is going to get overwritten. So what I can do is I can come into here and say download the skill manifest. I say download, and it brings it immediately right into my file and overwrites it. And so now you can see that mobile number, the thing that I just added, is now here as well. And so now I'm not going to overwrite my changes or do any of those things. It's a way to pull that one unique file down. So there's a lot of power here. And the fact that I can do all of my debugging locally without having to ever leave or deploy stuff is huge. So that's my magic for today.
It's super, super useful. And it's just a better like coding experience as well for me than the developer console. I think especially as somebody who normally writes Python, I like the way that it lints and marks it up and everything in VS Code. So
totally agree. It's a more familiar IDE, right? It's not me just working in like a text box on a web page, which is also easy to lose if you accidentally refresh the page or any of that kind of stuff.
Not to say that the developer console isn't great for if you're first starting out. You know, if you just want to try to throw together something quickly and don't want to have to do a lot of setup, it works pretty well. But once you get deeper into the guts of it, it's great to be able to debug locally. I have it set up where I'm also pushing to my GitHub whenever I push to my Lambda.
Oh, nice.
So it's
are you doing an Alexa hosted skill?
Yes, it is Alexa hosted.
Nice. So you're pushing it to the Git repository that they create for you, but you're also, did you modify it so it pushes to your GitHub also?
Yeah,
oh, that's awesome.
At the same time.
We should have you demo that. That would be super cool.
Yeah, it's nice because I like to keep my square green. Let me know I'm developing on something. So it's like, hey, make sure that's updated by the end of every time. So even my mistakes get pushed to GitHub because I have to test them. Right.
That's perfect. All right. So I think that's the VS Code one.
Yeah.
Habuma said
chats about Disney.
Yeah, it's got to be bromine. It can't be chlorine because that would make everybody's eyes red. That's fair. And then King Strunker has a question here. This is about Alexa Smart properties for residential endpoints. Okay, so he's looking for like a consumer-facing version of this. Does any API exist like this for normal end-user Echo device query control? The API endpoint looks like it's only available to smart properties. I'm looking for a non-hacky way to manipulate my own Echo devices over a REST API. Home Assistant can do it, but it does so my reverse engineering internal APIs at the mobile. Yeah, okay, gotcha. No, I don't think so. I don't think that there is a way today where you can call an API and like get a list of your devices. Kind of. The simplest version of this I can think of is quick links Is everybody familiar with quick links? Amanda, have I shown you quick links?
I don't think so.
All right, we'll do that too. Like every good evangelist, I have a website with all of my important details. And one of the things that I did with my skills here, these are 2 skills that I have published, is I added this try it now button. I haven't stylized them yet. I've just added this to try it. What this is, more or less, is an API call. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to click try it now. And it's going to take me to a custom web page that has a list of all of my devices. What I can then do with this information, if I could find the right one, which probably is not going to be easy. I have so many. Lab. I don't even know if I called it lab. I've been not good about my naming conventions. Echo Show 15. Yeah.
And while you're looking that up, in the chat, I'd like to know more about the toolkit pushing thing. It is a Dabble Lab video. I'm trying to find that exact video that shares how to do it, and I will send that either in the Slack after, since we're almost out of time today, or later. But that's where I got it from. It is a Dabble Lab video talking about how to push your GitHub repo and to the Lambda at the same time.
Alexa,
I like to keep my GitHub repo up to date. So
it's called Lab Echo Show 15.
I did call it Lab Echo Show 15. So let's see if we can find that in my list. This one. So what quick links allow you to do, if you guys haven't played with this, is that a user gets presented with this. They can click on your website or your mobile app or whatever. They click on the device that they have. Normally, people don't have this many devices. And then...
Ready to try the Skill Star Wars Databank unofficial?
Yes.
Here is the Skill Star Wars Databank unofficial. Launched from the web or a mobile device.
Welcome. What would you like to know?
Alexa, stop.
Do or do not. There is no try.
Awesome. So the quick links give me all of that functionality, which if you have a website to support your skill, this is an easy way to just get someone right in and start using your skill automatically. So if you haven't used quick links, I highly recommend it. As Amanda said, though, we are running short on time.
I know.
And I've got a Dabble Labs video to watch. I'm gonna make that change myself. That's super cool. I'm sure it's just overriding a command somewhere inside the Ask Deploy.
Basically, you just deploy to both at the same time. So you do your standard Git in the command line. You just do Git status, Git add, Git push.
Nice.
And then you do your Git commit like you normally would in the command line. And what it does is it just pushes to both.
Sweet.
It's really useful.
Very,
like
very
I said,
cool.
I like to keep my GitHub up to date. So it does take a minute. It's longer to push to the Lambda than to your GitHub. So your GitHub will be updated and the Lambda's still churning on it a little bit. But yeah.
Okay, so I have a couple of requests for all of you before we wrap up here today.
Mm-hmm.
The first one is I'd love to know quick feedback, thumbs up, thumbs down, +1, -1, whatever. Do you guys like this format? Obviously, I love having guests here and asking them questions and putting them on the hot seat for all of you. But it's nice to be able to kind of dig in and go a little deeper on some of these topics as well. So I'd love your opinions in the chat about what you think of today's format versus what we've done in the past few weeks. Not that one is going to win over the other, but I'm always curious to know what you think. The other thing is I would love to see a discussion. I don't know how to best foster this, but I feel like there's a lot of conversations that are happening right now in the chat as we're talking about these topics that kind of fizzle out and die once we're done with this episode. And it feels like I'd love to see like a transition where we go from here to Slack and continue the conversation, because there's a bunch of people that may not have tuned in or just in the wrong time zone or whatever, that probably would love to hear about quick links and how you guys like it, or the databases that you're using, or issues you've run into when you're going through certification. So I'd love to, like, at the end of this, always kind of shift the conversation over to Slack and continue it. Because I think there's a lot of cool things to say to each other. And it gives me more time to respond when I have the ability to type and I'm not just having to think off the top of my head.
Yeah, so, sometimes we need to go back. Like just now I was like, wait, where's that video? I'll find it. I'll post it in the Slack after we're done.
Yep. Okay. Well, I think that's going to be it for today.
Thank you. A lot of positive feedback on today's episode. So thank you all for tuning in today. We always appreciate you coming and asking questions. Keeps us busy, keeps us on our toes.
Very much. And TradeLast says that our Twitch calendar is out of date. So we should take a look at that too.
We should update that. I could update that today.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you guys all for tuning in. We'll be back next week with the certification team, so don't miss that. And we will see you all next Tuesday. Take care, everybody.